So the reason I started this entire post, I wrote something about, it was about football, but it was mostly about business. Don't chase money, chase great management.
You're listening to Let Me Speak to a Manager with Frank Cava and Ian Matthews.
What a crock of shit.
Yeah, that was hot mic, Sam.
It's 30 minutes away. I'll be there in 10.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Frankie!
You son of a bitch!
Way to start off with audio that sounds like you're taking a piss in a toilet.
That was the goal.
For those of you at home that don't know, there's a little countdown that starts on our little Riverside software that we use, 5, 4, 3. So as soon as it gets to 3, Frank just starts pouring a cup of coffee that sounds ridiculous. So not the best color man in the business. I started
pouring my coffee right before you hit the button.
He's not the best color man in the business for nothing, folks. So Frankie recently wrote a post on social media, and if you haven't seen it, and judging by the viewership numbers, you haven't, about him lamenting about the next coming and rise of the New England Patriots, who have been a thorn in the side of Frankie's favorite team, the Miami Dolphins, for 25 years now. And the Patriots are in the Super Bowl, and it is
again
objectively one of the greatest turnarounds in NFL history. There's only really been a couple teams that have improved as much as they have. They went from an abysmal 4 wins and 13 losses in 2024 to 14 wins and 3 losses. So pretty ridiculous jump, improving by 10 games in a single year. Do you know the other 2 teams that have improved by 10 games in a year?
I'm guessing the Lions is one of them, or you wouldn't have brought it up.
Oh, no. Miami Dolphins. Do you know which season they did it?
That was the year they went from Soprano.
2008. Yeah, you nailed it. 2008. And the 99 Colts.
Nice.
Also did it.
When they had Peyton Manning.
Huge turnaround. A lot of things kind of came out of nowhere this year. Drake May, their quarterback, went from being thought of as maybe a bust to being an MVP candidate in 1 year. They hired a new coach, Mike Vrabel, who came in and basically is going to sweep all of the, head coach of the year. He changed the defense around. Really, they've kind of been a dominant defense, especially in this playoff run. But kind of just looking at it, it's a depressing situation for Frankie, who thought that his nemesis was gone and behind him, but now it looks like they're about to make another 15-year run to be a thorn in his side.
So before we get too deep into this, I think we should also go into Belichick. So Belichick is the coach. So if you look at it, the Dolphins have not won a playoff game. Do you remember the last time the Dolphins won a playoff game, Ian?
I do not.
It's been 9,157 days as of 3 days ago when the last time the Dolphins won a playoff game. It was
Dan Marino?
No, he had just retired. It was December 30th of 2000. And my dad came down with me to watch the game because we ended up finishing this is how far along this was. I was driving a pickup truck. I still work for Ryan Holmes. My dad came down to help me frame my basement. We did it ourselves. I was 25 years old. It was forever ago. That's how long ago it was. In that same stretch of time, New England went to a Super Bowl with Parcells, and they got rid of Parcells. And then, long story, they ended up hiring Belichick. And Bill Belichick came in. They went to 3 Super Bowls in 2001, 2003, and 2004, and they won all of them. Then they got Randy Moss. They went 17-0. They went to 3 more Super Bowls where they didn't win any. 2 more Super Bowls. And then they went back to 3 more Super Bowls after that in 14, 16, and 18. They ended up having a decent 2019. 2020, COVID happens. Brady leaves, wins another Super Bowl on his own. And then, lo and behold, the woeful Patriots have 4 terrible seasons. They get rid of Belichick. They bring in a new guy who they literally kept there for 13 days less than a year. His name was Gerard Mayo. They brought him in and got rid of him. And then what they did is they top graded. It's a management philosophy called top grading. You look at who your worst performers are, you get rid of them, and you bring in somebody really, really good. Vrabel should have never gotten fired from his first job. He was a great coach in Tennessee, but they were dysfunctional. They bring Vrabel in, and in a year, he turns this whole thing around. So it's crazy. So the most winning coach, the second most winning and the most Super Bowl wins is Bill Belichick. Do you know why? What are your reasons for thinking he didn't get in the Hall of Fame on the first try?
So For those that don't know, they just had a vote on Hall of Fame, and Bill Belichick, who has been to, did we say 11 or 12 Super Bowls with two
It's
different
hard
teams?
to tell. I think he went to 11.
Okay. 1-2 with the Giants, won another 6 with the Patriots, most winning NFL coach of all time, Super Bowl wise.
Half-assed internet research says 10 or 11 went total.
Was not elected into the Hall of Fame. Frank's still learning how to use AI, so was not elected into the Hall of Fame unanimously, which to me is nuts. My opinion is it's because reporters are the ones who vote on those things, and Belichick was an absolute asshole to reporters for 30 years, made their lives miserable, treated them like shit, didn't answer any of their questions, was the most uninteresting post-game conference you could ever imagine, and gave them almost zero access to anything he was up to. And I believe that it is just a little bit of retribution, a bunch of powerless people stroking just a little bit of power to get back at Darth Vader. That's my
Do you think there's any truth to the fact that they're all jealous that he's banging a 27-year-old piece of poon?
That's your theory?
It's one of them. The other theory is
I don't think that has anything to do with anything, but that came out of left field, and I don't know. I'd have to give more thoughtful reflection to that opinion.
The other
feels subjective, and it feels a little underhanded by you because New England beat your team's ass for so long.
Hey, I told you that when I give my best stuff, we weren't recording. I had to pour my coffee and use that once we hit the button. The other reason I've heard, again, through some incredible half-assed internet research, is that many of the people who were like whispering in the ears of the reporters and some of the people who do vote, Bill Polian is one of them. And Bill Polian was the head honcho of the Colts. And the Colts were in a huge arms race back and forth with the Patriots. And there was two major scandals that the Bill Belichick-led Patriots had. One was called Deflategate, and one was called Spygate, both of which, another topic Ian loves talking about, Watergate, one of my all-time favorites. Both of them got that moniker because they were cheating in ways. One, they were like deflating balls, and in another one, they were recording somebody illegally. So that's what I had heard, is that potentially they wanted to kind of put him on ice for a year because he cheated.
Regardless of Belichick's Hall of Fame credentials, which I would say he is an easy Hall of Fame candidate. One thing that is very consistent from anyone who was on New England over the last 5 years since Brady left is the culture has just gotten cold. It had gotten, I think, Belichick, and I see this with leaders often, they become a victim of their own success because he had won so much, because he had done certain things a certain way. He became stubborn in listening to his team and listening to his leaders and paying attention to the culture of the locker room, or even really giving any value to the concept of culture, and stubbornly kept pushing a lot of the same ideas as the league was changing. Everyone who interviews today and talks about what's different with this New England team, the 14-win New England team versus last year's team, which only won 4 games, everyone talks about culture. Everyone talks about the locker room's different. We play for each other. We care about each other. They kind of make a big show of it, but I think it's pretty cool. Vrabel, and he was doing this in Tennessee, he waits in the tunnel for all of his guys. I don't know if you've seen this, Frankie. It's pretty neat. Like he just hangs in the hall and he literally gives everyone a bear hug and high fives. But what's also cool about that, he does the same after a loss. They just haven't lost a lot this year. Vrabel waits in the tunnel and, greets every single player as they come off the field before they go into the locker room, and has something to say to all of them, which, on its face, if you just do that and you're not a good coach, you're still going to get your asses kicked. So you still have to be good at strategy, X's and O's, coaching. But a lot of people are bringing up the difference in culture is very stark between the last regime, which both of the last 2 coaches kind of came from that regime, and Vrabel, who came from Tennessee and was able to spend some time outside of the New England organization, spent some time in Cleveland, spent some time in Tennessee to see things done a little differently than just how Belichick had done it.
So I'm going to go backwards a little bit to come forward on this thing. So the reason I started this entire post, I wrote something about, it was about football, but it was mostly about business. And what it is, it's a moniker that's pretty popular, but it's don't chase money, chase great management is the thought process, right? So Vrabel he went to Ohio State, which is a football factory, one of the best places to possibly go from a culture standpoint, from how you get brought up inside of football. He was drafted by the Patriots. He played for years. He played with a couple of other teams as well, but he understood kind of the Patriots from the ground up. And then he had a chance to, in his playing career, he went to a couple other places, but then he also bounced around a little bit as a coach, became a head coach, and then he moonlit after he got fired as outside of with one of the worst organizations in football, but one of the brightest people in football, to get a little bit of a kind of a 360 look. But what I will talk about first and foremost, before we really dive into the Vrabel when he's changed, is the moniker of chasing good ownership or good leadership. Robert Kraft is looked at as one of the best and brightest minds in football. He was one of the first billionaire owners, very successful. And if you read the book Dynasty, which is a book about the Patriots, it talks about how he out-negotiated the current owner of the Patriots when he bought the team, because the Patriots owner didn't own the parking lot around the stadium. So he's just a smart, strategic guy. And when he took ownership, they weren't great immediately. It took some time to get there. But he hired a great coach and let him do his thing for a long time. And there was a debate. Who's more important, Belichick or Brady? And before that debate was solved, we thought it was going to be Brady. But then Belichick won basically an entire Super Bowl using defense, and Kraft leaned in and picked his coach. And the quarterback left. Quarterback ultimately did a great thing, won another Super Bowl elsewhere. But the leader looked at it and said, I made a good decision. I think it's the right choice, and watch this thing bottom out. It bottomed out. He got rid of him and fired literally the most winning Super Bowl coach ever, brought in somebody he thought was a smart hire, fired him inside of 1 year, very decisively, and then top graded. That has to be celebrated first. The owner figured all of this stuff out, and great management, great leadership set us up for this next chapter, which literally took 4 years to go from the bottom back to the top. And that's very, very, very hard to do in football. The Dolphins have been trying to do this for 3 freaking centuries, or 3 decades.
Two things the owner did there, which I think is good insight that you brought this up. 2 things the owner did there that I see most executives are abysmal at. He fired a legend. I see this in companies all the time. Someone who is just 5-10 years past their prime. They're not putting the same effort in, not the same energy, not the person they used to be. And the executive is waiting to let them quit on their terms. Yep. And they wait too long, and they lose a lot of really good young talent who is frustrated with the direction of the company. So the fact that Kraft went and fired a Hall of Fame coach and pushed a legend out when it was clear that he wasn't going to be able to kind of bring back some of the juice, because Belichick would have stuck around another 10 years just middling around, and Kraft would have died. Like, Kraft is too old to sit around and watch 10 more years of lousy. That's the first thing. And the second thing that you just brought up is hire slow, fire fast. So he brings in Mayo, and he thinks, okay, I'm going to be loyal to this guy because he was an interim coach and did okay in his little interim stint. The players really liked him and wanted him, when it was really obvious that this was a poor choice. This wasn't the right decision. I let other things get in the way. He didn't let his ego get in the way and say, well, let's give him a few more years. When it was really obvious that he wasn't going to get him to a Super Bowl, he made a decision in less than a year, which is, even in the NFL where every year 30% of the coaches are replaced, to replace someone after 1 year doesn't normally happen, because that's admitting the owner screwed up. If you wait 2-3 years, you're admitting that the coach screwed up. When you do it in a year, you're saying, I screwed up, I made a mistake. And most billionaires are not great at that. I'm glad you brought both of those up. I see those as recurring mistakes of executives throughout corporate America.
100%. And if you look at it, Belichick probably did stay a year or two too long. So the human element comes into play. We've all been in this position. Someone's lost their fastball. You hope they're going to get it back. They had to leave for a medical reason, or different things, right? And you're like, okay, this person was great. I have loyalty to him. Like, the harsh reality is he probably should have left 2 years earlier than he did. But the owner had a heart, was empathetic. But then you have to look at it as an owner and say, look, what are we going to do here? And that is when they were really, really, really decisive, and it made the wrong hire. but we went through it. But that's a big deal. And if you look at it from other NFL franchises, there's a bunch of people out there who are just kind of stringing it along. Like the guy in Cincinnati probably should have been fired. Jerry Jones does this. The Oakland Raiders, the worst teams do this stuff. It makes sense to have a heart, but on the opposite side of it, you have to understand when you need to be decisive and go forward. And the entire impetus of this is you have to run these things with precision and really, really strong leadership. And in leadership, George Washington has a famous saying. He goes, if you make a good decision or a bad decision, you've made a decision, and that's better than no decision. And then if you made a bad decision, you reassess the decision, you make a new decision, and that's what the Patriots did really well. But the culture shift, I argue, started at the top, and they hired the best coach on the market last cycle, and that's what Ian's going to talk about next.
My favorite George Washington quote is, don't believe everything you read on the internet. And the reason why I bring that one up is Frank's half-ass internet research was a little worse than normal. Vrabel was not actually drafted by the New England Patriots. He was drafted by the Steelers.
I said that wrong.
He played as a backup for 4 years. So, but also compelling here, I also want to take that little bit of a lesson. Had he only worked in the Patriots organization, he would have only known Belichick's way. And Belichick is a pretty cold, nasty guy to deal with. He's smart and he's a good tactician, but he's a little bit like Patton as a general. He's a prick. He's not, he's pretty rough on people. Vrabel played for the Steelers, the Patriots, and the Chiefs. I would say 3 of the top 5 run organizations in the NFL. I mean,
especially during the time frame he was with those. He was 97 to 2000 with the Steelers.
That, along with being in the Ohio State, he got to see different ways of winning. And it's really clear that Vrabel took the great defense, tough defense, discipline from Belichick without the nasty, not nice to your teammates, not nice to reporters. Vrabel's the opposite. He's great with reporters. He was kind of famous for a thing he did in Tennessee. He would always give the first question to a local, like an older local female reporter, because females normally get ignored in the NFL. And he would always give her the first question. He's, sitting around the tunnel. That's not a Belichick thing. So some of the cultural stuff we're about to talk about, he obviously picked up from other organizations. And I think it's a shame for me when I see someone, this was Frank. All Frank ever knew was NVR's culture right out of college. So,
Outback.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. All he knew was Outback and NVR. I see a lot of people, had I stayed with General Electric, I learned a lot. I learned discipline. I learned organization. I worked with incredibly smart people. I learned about how, like, some of the decisions we're talking about here that Kraft made, very GE. You made a bad decision, fire the person quickly, move on, go to the next thing. Some of that kind of stuff was very GE. But if I had stayed there another 10 years, I think it would have been a big disservice to my career, because there were a lot of negative aspects of that culture and it would have become who I was. I stayed there just long enough to get the good from it and know that I didn't like certain aspects of the culture, and I could go on to another company and learn new things. So I think it's a mistake when someone right out of college stays with a company for too long. I think you should go there long enough to learn what they do and then bounce a little bit so that you have more value to add when you do finally find a place where you're going to stick.
I mean, if it wasn't for all of these things that Vrabel did, Ohio State, Steelers, Patriots, the Chiefs, and then, back with the Browns, there's no way he would be everybody in Romania's favorite coach. And he clearly is.
We are really popular in Romania right now. I mean, really taking off. I don't understand how that's happening because they don't speak English in Romania, but we are really popular there. Like second place, second country favorite. America's still number one, obviously. So there was a segment that was run on ESPN where they talked about something that Vrabel did right when he arrived. The first thing he did when he arrived to set the culture that I think is relevant and would work in any company in a number of different ways. And rather than just going into it, it's kind of his 4 H's exercise that he did with the entire team, where everyone had to go through and talk about 4 H's. And I'm going to play that segment without talking about it any further, and then we can kind of jump in after that point. Awesome. Everything about that I think is cool. My favorite part of it, and then I'll ask you your favorite part. My favorite part is that Vrabel went first. If you're going to ask, you think about the alpha of a NFL locker room. It's like the alpha of alphas a massive amount of ego and testosterone and toughness, and no one ever wants to show weakness in an NFL locker room, ever, in any football locker room, really. But NFL is the peak of peak. And so when a coach, one who has won multiple Super Bowls and has the pedigree like Vrabel of being a tough guy and a tough coach, comes in and starts with the 4 H's and he's vulnerable, I think it's hard for everyone else not to reciprocate.
It just shows the kind of leader he is, right? Like he's going to ask him to do something, but he shows it through demonstration first to set the tone. There's certain times as a leader you want to go last, and there are certain times as a leader you need to go first. And good leaders don't struggle with those two things. Like, this is stupid, but I think it's funny. At the Outback, when I was a kid, they didn't ask us this, but Nickel and I used to do it. We used to park in the last row. And the reason we parked in the last row is because that's something our football coach taught us, that you would just go to the back because you didn't want to take up any of the good spaces, right?
Awesome. Yeah.
Right? So we would do it. Now, we had managers who parked at the very back with us, and like we had immediate respect for them. And then we had other guys that moved in that took the spot right next to the handicap spot. Like, what a dick. And that's how they managed. So like little things along those lines, you need to know when you should be the primary element and when you need to lead from the back. And this, because you're asking like true alphas to be something that they're not, you have to go first. And it also shows how seriously you take it, because a lot of people could blow this off. But by being vulnerable, going first, being honest, leaning into it, other people lean into it. The only way to really change a culture, especially if it's your culture you're trying to create, is you have to set the tone. And that was the right time to set the tone.
Was Nickel disappointed when he first visited the Kava Company's worldwide office and saw that you had a massive parking spot that said Frank Kava, CEO, right next to the door? That you no longer followed any of this Outback nonsense? One of my favorite things to do is to park in Frank Kava's parking space, by the way.
Of course.
Jump my way in as quick as I can.
Yes.
So the whole
never learned the parking patterns of that job he had in college for 3 days before he went back to the bars.
It's one of my favorite games to play is to count how many times I see the word Kava when you go to Frank's office. It must be written on walls everywhere, 400 places probably, just to make sure in case you didn't know it was his company.
You haven't been here in a while. It's on the toilet paper now.
I was surprised you didn't put Matthews on the toilet paper more than your own name.
Nobody puts ass in asphalt like Frank Kava.
No. I think one of the first things that he's doing here with the team, though, I was talking to Frankie about this. I've been nerding out on some ancient Greek philosophy lately, and read the book Republic by Plato. And that book is about the Peloponnesian War between Sparta and Athens. And one of the big concepts of that book is the Spartans won that war because they were cohesive. They were all pulling for the same direction, and he called it a timocracy. A timocracy is when everyone's pulling one direction based on a common ethos, a common goal. And Athens was a democracy, but they had given so much power to the people that you had all these competing demands on what should be done, and everything was a vote and everything. And everyone had different ideas of which direction Athens should go. So there was never one cohesive strategy because no one took the time to really listen to what everyone else was going through. And so there wasn't one common theme. What Vrabel did very quickly was get everyone to understand each other so that we can all pull in one direction. I love something he said in that of, if you're going to coach people hard, you want to start with a common understanding, and you understand me. So when I'm coaching you hard, it's coming from a good place where I care about you and I'm not doing it just to be a prick.
You have to define what it is that you're going to do and how you set the vision. And that's the thing I like most about Vrabel and what he did is he's authentic, right? Like he's honest. I got this from somebody else. It's really good. I didn't even change the name of it. I just stole it. That's honesty. You can believe that. I came up with this myself. I was doing it while I was doing a darkness retreat. Like he didn't come up with bullshit. He just shot him straight. And that's kind of how he is. He's just a straight honesty broker, and he set the tone, and I love it.
Yeah, I love even in that segment, right? The segment, ESPN named it the Patriots 4H's, and Vrabel's like, no, I got this from Stefanski in Cleveland. I'm not putting my name on that. I'm not stealing that. In psychology, there's something called a vulnerability loop, Frankie. A vulnerability loop is if someone shows vulnerability, the other person kind of detects that signal. It's a way of signaling. And as humans, one of the things that makes us unique versus other animals is when we detect someone being vulnerable, we usually return the signal. We will, so if you're vulnerable, then I'm vulnerable. And as you think about these 4 questions and how you can use it in a business. So Frank and I, when we first met, I don't know that we disliked each other, but we were skeptical, let's say. And I think that was just 2 young dudes that were trying to be really competitive and move up that probably thought the other was a little full of shit. We didn't really become a good team working at MBR until we kind of dove into some of these 4-H's. So my heroes are my parents. My dad is a blue collar guy. And Frank was like, when I tell him that, he's like, my dad's a blue collar guy and he's my hero too. And the more we started really getting to know each other and sharing some of the, without saying like the Patriots H's, we wouldn't have said any of that. We just started drinking beers and where'd you grow up? How'd you grow up? And the more we got to know each other, it was like, oh shit, like I'm looking at a spitting image. Before I didn't think that, but the more I got to know him, the more I was like, oh man, I could go to war with this guy. I could go battle with this guy for sure. I want to get behind him.
It's so funny because I remember that really well. The Red Sox, it was 2004. The Red Sox ultimately won the pennant. And we were on JMU's campus before one of us wasn't invited back. And while we were down there,
that's a low blow. That's a low blow.
I didn't get into the details. While we were down there, I ran back. I was at this event and I said, hey, does anybody want to watch the Red Sox tonight? I want to go watch the game. And Ian's like, I do. And like Ian was like the last person I was hoping would say that because we weren't really friends. We were kind of frenemies, if you will. But I ran back to my hotel room and I called my grandfather, who in 2004 was 73 years old. And we used to always talk about the Red Sox. And I called him up and then we went back down to the bar. And the first thing I said is, I just talked to my granddad. And Ian's like, what do you mean? And I told him, I was like, my granddad, 73, he's on the couch watching the game with my grandma. He's a hero of mine. He's the one who kind of forged the way our family kind of does everything. He was a big influence on my dad, who was big on me. But it was history and it was heroes right off the bat. And I volunteered that without being asked because that's kind of how I am. Ian immediately goes, we went into what he talked about with his granddad. And our granddads literally did the same exact thing. One picked Detroit, one picked Boston because they were blue collar dudes that could have used their skills in those marketplaces. And what you start to realize pretty quickly by being vulnerable, who wants to see the game, go and do that. Talk about your granddad, which is not the coolest thing to do when you're in your 30s and you're in like a bar with a bunch of dudes, but you do. Because it's who I am, and it immediately connected with somebody else.
Yeah, so the 2 easiest out of these 4 are heroes in history.
100%.
Heroes in history. So easy enough where I ask those questions in every interview. Unlike a lot of corporate managers, I don't really worry about what HR might think of a question. I ask personal questions. I ask about where you grew up, what it was like growing up there. Did you have family there? I've never once offended anyone by asking those questions. And if that would offend you, I don't want to hire you anyway, so go to hell. Asking about history, where are you from? What's it like growing up there? What did you like doing? Who's there? Are there people still there? Tell me about your hometown. I love to hear people brag about their hometowns. And I love to ask the hero question. Who are your heroes growing up? Who did you look up to? Who are people you wanted to emulate? I want to hear like what you have to say around those 2 questions. And you can ask those questions as someone you've known for 10 seconds. You don't need, now Heartbreak, a little more awkward to ask questions like that. I need to get to know you a little more.
I want to say 2 more things about history before we move off of it. So first of all, with history, we talk about this a lot. And I think I've shared this here, but maybe I haven't. I don't know, but I'm going to do it anyways. So I have 2 business or coach types that I work with. One I don't work with as much anymore, but I worked with him for 4 or 5 years. His name was Daniel Marcos, and I work with a guy named Alistair who's been on our podcast. Both of them are foreigners. And both of them, one's from Mexico City and one's from Rhodesia, that's now Zimbabwe. But both of them said to me with basically the same exact thing. He goes, you're very unlike any other American that we work with. And I said, why? And they said, you look backwards a lot in a reflective manner. And I think one of the reasons I've been successful in business, and one of the things Ian and I talk about, he's literally reading the New York Times bestseller from the year 0 AD. Like, we both read things that are incredibly old because we can learn from it. We both just finished the book recently within the last month, 1929, which is about the market crash. like some of the best books I've read are all about things that are in the past. And what I learned from them is little things not to be repeated going forward. Are we exactly where we're going to be from 1929? I don't think so. But are there things that are similar? Did the people who made it through the Great Recession, through the Great Depression, were non-levered or were so fucking rich, it didn't matter? I'm not so rich, it doesn't matter. So I look at leverage and things like that because you can learn lessons about these things. The other side of it that is really interesting, I saw an interview with a spy. And in spies, you have to develop people. And I'm trying to get my kids to not watch the same 9 movies over and over again. So we're watching things on spies because they find it interesting, even at 7 and 4. But developing an asset is the number one job of a spy. It's getting somebody to give you intel. And the story that is incredible is this spy developed a relationship with an informant. And at the end, he goes, "Why did you decide to work with me and trust me?" He goes, "Because you were the only person in the 5 years I've been here who asked me about my family." So having a historical view, asking personal things to people, you don't have to be offensive. Everybody wants to be the star of the show. If you have a look back and you say, "Tell me about yourself. How'd you grow up? What'd you like to do?" Like that's what you call rapport building. And it's so incredibly missed right now. And where we are in society, that those two things, I think history and heroes and tell me about it matters and it connects. Go ahead.
I'm going to stay on this because I love that you dove into it a little more. There's psychology behind knowing shared history. So what it does is it contextualizes behavior. And I'll explain what I mean by that. If you've ever had a grandparent who saved rubber bands and aluminum foil, there's something in their history where they didn't have a lot. They didn't have a lot of money. And it describes their behavior a little bit. That's contextualizing. When we know someone's background, we stop attributing their little quirks to personality flaws, and we start seeing their quirks as adaptive behaviors. You had to adapt. Your behaviors had to adapt for wherever you grew up, whatever your upbringing was, whatever your environment was. The more I know about that, right? And if you're interviewing someone, it's not a resume walkthrough. It's like, what formed you? What environment formed you? And that could be positive or that could be negative. I want to know those things. That way, if you do work for me, or I do work with you, or I partner with you, I know why you're behaving. I don't judge you right away if you handle something differently than I will. I realize that you grew up in a different context than me, and something might be easier or harder for you based on what that context was.
There's something that we've talked about before. It's called the strengths interview. And this dipshit who worked at NVR made it seem like it was his. And when I finally took the cellophane off the book, it's a leadership book that's up on my shelf about doing things differently. It was right in there. But the point of that interview is you just ask people questions about themselves. And when I was a new manager, I would literally use the strengths interview over and over again and talk to people about, like, you know, what are you proud of? These types of things. And they all told me, I was reading a script, but I took the time to sit down with them, get a cup of coffee, have that conversation. And that's the way it's what Vrabel's doing in a much, much, much simpler method with a lot lower stakes. It's just getting to know people, because when you get to know people, they understand that you're willing to listen to them and you care about them and you're doing things that are slightly different than others, which gives them a want, need, and desire to support you and what you're trying to achieve. It's a mutual respect and it works incredibly well. And we still use, like, you use it from interviews, things along those lines.
It's funny you bring that up because when I started at NVR, maybe I'd been there like 9 months, and this person that you're talking about was like, "We do something here in my region, you know, called the strengths interview, and it's a stay interview." And he starts trying to explain it to me, and I go, "Oh, you talking about First Break All the Rules?"
That's the book.
Which is a chapter like from that. And he was like, it was like, you could tell like he had free reign on, because at MVR, no one read books and like everyone was in the same. So like here came someone who actually read books, and it was like, yeah, you didn't make any, you know, it's really funny. We had an HR manager came along like 10 years into my tenure at MVR, and he had to give like a little presentation to all the senior executives on the way he sees the world. And he completely stole a whole bunch of shit from the same, like, you know, here are some of the questions that I like to ask an organization. It was literally verbatim. And I did the same shit to him. I was like, oh yeah, you took that from this chapter. Maybe you should put that in the bottom corner of the freaking slide, because you've lost a lot of respect with me.
So I'll tell you 2 quick stories here. And this is the complete opposite of Vrabel. It's the Patriot 4 H's. No, it isn't. It's Kevin Stefanski's 4 H's. I love that. I had a neighbor.
Yeah, and if you asked Stefanski, he would probably tell you some book he read that in. Like, it's not even his.
But the point is,
shit from everyone.
Vrabel's not a poser. But I'll tell you two quick stories, right? So I was at CG and I was immersed in it. And I was really leaning into it. But I was starting to figure out who people were. And this guy got up there and he basically gave an entire sermon. And it was a Tony Robbins lecture from 20 years earlier that I'd listened to. It was the same thing down to the story he tells with a gun. And the guy didn't cite it. He didn't credit it. He didn't do anything. And then at that moment, I just knew that guy was full of shit. And he was somebody I never trusted him. He's had a ton of business problems in his life, but I sniffed it out right off the bat. If he said, this is something I learned from, and people tell me like you cite too many things that you read. It's like, it's not mine. I got it from somewhere else. I'm cool doing that. The second one is I had a neighbor and he was a pastor and he was a nice guy. And I've had an on again, off again relationship with religion, but he was somebody neighbor. It was Easter. I was alone. I living in Charlottesville, and he brought me in, and I sat right up front, and he read his sermon. And his sermon was on Owen Meany, who you and I have talked about. And I asked him at the end, I was like, oh, man, did you read that book? I love that book. And he goes, nah, it was just source notes. I'm like, what? He goes, yeah, I get source notes, and that's how I build my lectures and my sermons. Basically, I pay a subscription service, and I just read that as part of the mass. And I was like, oh, my God. So both of those, one guy lied about it and one guy didn't source it and then didn't even understand. He was just reading it and couldn't have a conversation about it. It's like, how can you lean into these types of people that aren't even being honest? Like, those are not leaders that I would follow.
Yes. So on the heroes, on the piece on the heroes,
neither of those guys are my heroes, by the way, Ian.
Clearly that jackass preacher is not your hero. So with heroes, the psychology behind this is just that we tend to emulate what we admire. So if I know who your hero is, I know what you admire. And if I can understand why that's your hero, I understand your core values better, right? So if I ask someone who their hero in business is and they see Elon Musk, you might be a creative person. You might be a problem solver. You might be someone that likes to invent things, someone that, right? If I ask that question, you say Jack Welch, okay, you're a hard driving business person. That's what you value. Or if you said Jamie Dimon, you value money and organization. So those kind of things. And when we find out about heroes, when people are growing up, also, if they say a coach or a teacher, or there's a reason why that person is your hero, you value their values. And by you telling me that, you're telling me what you value, what you're interested in, what you do. If you tell me David Goggins, right? You're a hard worker. You love grinding. You like you're not going to be an 8 to 5 person if you tell me that. I learn things from you on who you think are your heroes. That's the psychology behind that.
Keep going. You're on a roll.
All right. So 3, the third H is heartbreak. The way to prompt it is share a difficult moment that shaped you, or share an embarrassing moment for you, or share something that has really stuck with you that was a setback or a failure. I just love talking about failures. I love asking about failures. I don't know if I asked you that in business, like a big setback or a failure or something deeply personal that has kind of shaped you, what do you think you would say, Frankie, if you were sharing that with your team at Kava?
So I don't really talk about heartbreaks, but I do talk about setbacks quite a bit in the business setting. And the biggest setbacks that I draw off of are bad decisions I made in college, or decisions I had. Like, I had a major lawsuit at some point in my life that we've covered here. Like, those are big ones, right? Or what I will often do, because people can't relate to those things, is I'll talk about smaller setbacks or smaller disappointments or smaller frustrations. And then I very quickly get to hope when I talk about those things. Like, hey, this isn't going to derail us, because I think with this lesson, I can get to here. So we were talking about something today, and one of our friends, he's going to have to bury his daughter. It's just really, really sad. But he's a business mentor of mine. I think Ian and he are more friends, but he's a mentor of mine. It's Ken Glassmark. And I got incredibly lucky when I was interviewing for promotions. 2 times when I was interviewed for promotions, I had a training class the day before with Ken. And he's one of the most dynamic leaders in the history of NVR. And he's really good at humbling you and making you realize mistakes. And what I did after both of those training classes is I went home and took down mistakes I made and how I fixed it, made sure I didn't repeat it, and how I got better from it. And I won interviews twice in a row by simply following that formula. So having the problem isn't the problem. It's what did you do with the problem, and how did you make sure you got around the hurdle, didn't become a constant problem you have to deal with again, and how did you get better because of it? But those are things that you can use and you can talk to people about. And in interviews, like, you got to pick your spots, or if you're talking to somebody, you can't just be an open book about dumb shit you did. But at the same time, like, if you can have a vulnerable moment that you learn from, it's the best thing you can possibly talk about when you're trying to get advancement in career or anything along those lines.
I'll share two heartbreaks from GE. So kind of in my formative years that really the two of them led to me leaving GE and the bond kind of breaking of my loyalty. I was loyal like a dog for 5 years at GE. I mean, I would have got a tattoo on my shoulder. I was so into the company. It did a lot for me. It fit me really well like a glove. We had a merger, and two of the best leaders I still have ever had. I don't know that I had a better manager at MVR in 13 years than either of these two. They taught me so much about team building, about sales, about organization, just amazing executives. And we had a merger, and a larger GE business unit merged with ours. And when that happens, it's like an acquisition. The larger unit gets to choose which people stay. And it was the most depressing month where no one would give any guidance or info to the two executives that I thought the world of, that I would literally just step in front of a car for. I loved these guys. They were like my glassmakers. And every time I would ask them, like, what's going on? They're like, man, it's the weirdest thing. I'm just out in the cold. I think I'm out. No one would tell them. And the new executives coming in wouldn't give them that feedback, wouldn't say anything. And then we're at our annual meeting and they have a dinner and they're like, guys, we're out. We just got told by some person in HR that we'd never met before that we have like 3 months to go find another job in GE. And I remember it was heartbreaking to me because I saw the people coming in weren't as good. But also I just thought they treated them like disposable trash. And these were two guys that had been with GE like 25 years at that point. Like, they had dedicated everything to that company. And right there, I was like, if they will do that to them, Bob and Jim, if they will do that to them, I'm disposable for sure. I'm just a kid at the time, maybe 26, 27. And then the other heartbreaking thing, I had a new executive after this merger happened, and I'd been promoted into this big job. And I was over his house and, saw a picture of his kid playing hockey in Korea and asked him what positions he play. And he had no friggin' idea. And I was like, yeah, like defense or forward. And he was like, I don't know the game. I haven't really seen him play much. This kid was like 15 in the picture. He was not like 5. He's like, yeah, my kid's back in Korea with my wife. And that was heartbreaking to me. That was like, I've told that story to so many people who report to me. And the reason I tell that story is I want them to know that those are not my values, that if you are going to work for me, you're also going to be expected to be a good husband, a good wife, a good parent. Like, those are things that are important to me. And I'm going to be that. I would rather not have a job than be a shitty dad. And, when you share heartbreak, again, the psychology behind it, it shows what you value. It's not therapy. It's not trying to open up some wound. You're just sharing the scar. And by the way, that shaped me because I wanted to be on the opposite side of it, or here's why that was heartbreaking to me. Luckily, at MVR, I had a lot of mentors that would have never told you, I don't know what position my kid plays. Like, you just said Ken Glassmacher, frickin' dad of the year, right? Like, he didn't miss anything that his kids did. Bill Inman, phenomenal dad, 2 daughters, right? Paul Seville, CEO, coached his kids in Little League. A lot of people didn't know that because he was older by the time he was CEO. But I had a lot of executives that were the opposite of that crazy Korean executive I had that, didn't give a shit about his kid or spending any time with him.
So we're about out of time, so I'm going to wrap up like this. So the 4-H are their history, heroes, heartbreak, and hope. So Ian told a story about GE, and we've talked about that story. I've told the story that Ian's tired of me talking about, where I went into the office of this place in the afternoon and there were tons of people working. I'm like, this isn't the spot for me. But one of the coolest stories I ever heard is from one of my favorite uncles. And he told a story about my dad. So it has history and it has my hero, who's my dad. And My dad moved from Massachusetts to Florida when I was 5. And he moved because my grandfather, although awesome guy, was not a great business leader. My dad had to go chase some new things. And the story my uncle told is how it was so different watching my dad parent than how my uncle and my dad's dad parented them. About being involved in sports, being like my dad was not an easy guy to get along with, and he was really intimidating, but he was involved. And seeing all those things kind of work up and hearing that from somebody who had a different eyesight than I did into it. And what it also gave me was an incredible amount of hope because nobody told my dad he had to live a different life than his dad. He just decided to live a different life than his dad. And that gave me the hope and the understanding that I can make these choices myself. I can do things like he did it. I can improve upon it if I didn't like certain things because I'm ultimately in control and in charge. And it's really, really cool to be empowered at the end of all of this. And I think that's what the 4-H's really do. It empowers you to win football games and build community and build team, but also empowers you to be a great dad or a great manager or a great leader or whatever it is that you're trying to build.
Even a great salesperson, right? We talked about, if you're meeting someone, you can learn about their history, you can learn about their heroes. If you're selling real estate to someone, what are your hopes? Like, what do you like? It's an aspirational purchase, especially the larger purchases. All of these things work. And so just real quick wrapping up, questions you can ask yourself as a leader, what part of my history am I hiding from my team and why? Why am I hiding that? Why wouldn't I share that? And do my actions reflect my heroes, my stated heroes, or am I emulating the wrong behaviors, right? If Frank and I are going to say that our father or our grandfather is a hero, would they be proud of the way that we're leading this team, the way we're behaving? Or are we starting to emulate different things or go for different goals that they would be proud of? Am I brave enough to share a heartbreak that didn't have a happy ending, that was maybe humiliating, that was maybe emotional for me, that was maybe embarrassing? Am I brave enough to do that the way Vrabel was in front of a room full of alphas and get up and share those kind of things that some coaches might think are soft, right? And so as I'm asking those questions of a team, either in a one-on-one setting or you can do this as a team building exercise, what represents home to you, right? Is it a place, a person? Is it a feeling? And what about your home is uniquely part of who you are today? So I can better understand you. When you tell me about your hero, what are the attributes of your hero that you really admire, the respect, and that you want to emulate so I can help keep you in check to see if you're living up to that? Hope. If failure was impossible, what would you attempt in the next 12 months? And also with hope, I think hope and heartbreak go together. If something fails, if you had a bad year, a bad quarter, a bad project that didn't go the way you wanted to, okay, how are we feeling about it? Let's not just move on. How are we feeling about it personally that we had that heartbreak? All right, how do we keep from that feeling coming back? What's our hope on the next project, the next quarter, the next thing that we go after? Like, don't let go of that heartbreak. That, a lot of teams talk about how coming close to a goal and losing was what sparked them to go get it the next time. They didn't lose track of what it felt like to lose, but they used it to fuel hope for what was next as leaders. And my hope is that we get even more Romanian followers out of this amazing piece of work we put out there, Frankie, and pick up a few more Outback employees that aspire to make it to the big time and have their own parking space, just like Frank Kava.
The easy thing to do is just shut up and let it wrap, but I'm going to say something. I'm going to say 2 quick things to kind of close this. To me, history, heroes, heartbreak, and hope is built like a quadrant. And if you go from bottom left quadrant, top right quadrant, bottom right quadrant, they all kind of link back together in a circle like a clock or an 80s video game, right? Hope gets back into history, and it gives you, it's kind of a perpetual wheel, if you will, of all the way through. The other thing is about this is if you are currently a work in progress, that's okay. Ian was telling that last story and I just thought of something from 6th grade. And I can tell you where I was sitting, and it was a very, very kind of a humbling moment for me. My hero in 6th grade was Dan Marino. And my teacher couldn't even read his name right. She kept calling him Don Marino because I guess I had such bad handwriting. And the girl who went after me, her hero was Jesus, because she was really involved in the church. And all I could think about was how small I felt. And I still remember that 30 That was 40 years ago, 40 years later. So if you aren't killing it in any one of these things, you can. You just have to recalibrate. And you have to use the 4-H's to pick slightly different heroes or look at slightly different things or go a little deeper in history. But if you do that, I think it can really set you on a really cool.
Listen, I know Jesus has made a big impact on the world, but there is no way he threw a spiral as pretty as Dan Marino.
There's no doubt. But I felt like such a little shit. I was like, oh God, pretty minor. Could you reshuffle the order?
Oh my God, that is such a clown show. But that happens after. Well, it's actually better that you went first. Like if she'd have gone and you'd have had to get up there and said, Dan Marino after follow, you got to follow Jesus. Oh my Lord. Hopefully you're all still here. If you are, mash that like button and that follow. Don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Apple. You give us a 5-star review, you write some comments, and you let us know who you are. We're going to send you a premium cotton merch t-shirt that you are just going to love wearing it around your friends. So you can tell them your hero is Frank Cava.
The good news, Ian, nobody in Romania knows who the hell Dan Marino is, but they do know who Jesus Christ is.
They do know Jesus in Romania. There's no doubt. Frankie, good to see you. You're my hero, buddy.
Good to see you, buddy.